So with that, I'm going to kick it off to Kimberly. Kimberly is the director of our Faith and Revival Coalition and state co-chair, and she's going to lead off the conversation, and then we're going to open it up for conversation.
I just echo what Jake said. Thank you all for coming. And again, this is totally unscripted. Cynthia did get me some questions coming from our guests here today, so that's a little bit different. But because it is unscripted, I would like to open us in prayer as well and just invite God to lead the conversation. So God, we come to you today just so grateful, thankful for this country and this political process. Thank you for all the people that are here today. We just ask you to fill the room, just bring your spirit and help speak through me with questions to just open up and help people see the character and the faith and the family of Vivek and Apoorva and just see that other side of them and just see their authenticity and what they're really wanting to do with our country. All God's people said? Amen. Okay, so I do have to start with this. I learned this week on the bus with Vivek, we were just talking in the back of the bus, and it came up, and he happened to share that at an early age, like back in high school, I think he was talking about being the only Hindu in a Catholic high school, and that he had come to learn to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. And I just thought about that all day and just thinking about that and wonder what you might have to say about that or how you see that in Vivek and all the success that he's had.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to thank Jim, Cindy. Thank you so much for this. We're so excited to be here. And Jake and Kimberly have become some of our best friends in life over the course of this. So I think that is such a good question, really insightful to who Vivek is, because he is comfortable standing up when everyone else thinks he's crazy, and that doesn't bother him. As long as he is standing in for principles that he believes in. And that was during his time at St. X, a Catholic high school. He was the only Hindu, but he ended up being the religion scholar. Because he wanted to understand. He cares about understanding how other people are thinking, where they're coming from, seeing what he can learn, and then deciding where he, falls out on these things. He went to Harvard and was a staunch, at that time, libertarian. He was, going out. He was the president of the Politics Institute. These were the things that he loved. He was never someone who thought, oh, I think differently from you, and I don't want you to know about that. He would say, tell me about it. Why do you think this way? Where do you come from? Why do you think what you think? How can I change your mind? What are the differences? And he was the same guy when I met him at Yale Law School, when by that time he was getting pretty conservative, and he was very outspoken in a group of people who were extremely biased in the other direction, and that never bothered him. He loved raising his hand, being that guy every time. We joked about this in a different event where every weekend we would go out for dinner. That was like our heart. We would go out to dinner with a big group of people, and Vivek would come with some random controversial topic and just launch it into the room and wait for all of the Yale law students to get all riled up, and then we'd debate. And I was sitting there like trying to eat my dinner. But that's just who he's always been. And he stands up for those principles, but he enjoys that. And so that comes into this, where he has been seeing over these years so many people who he sees share his values, but they aren't able to engage that other side and show them, this is where we're the same. This is where we're different. This is why I think the way I think and why I think I'm right. And have someone who really represents that. And I think that's what makes him so unique in this race, is that he is someone who can show people on the coasts about why we have the Midwestern values we do, why we think they're so important. We can show people on the left why we think what we think. People who might otherwise be very interested in diversity and inclusion, show them why that actually is worse for our country, worse for people who are supposedly benefiting from the diversity policies. And I think having someone who actually can represent those values, because he has been representing and talking and understands where those people come from for decades now, that is an extremely important strength, because we are very divided right now. Mm-hmm. And we need people who can bring people together, show us how much we share, because even the people on the left who think some of these things that we find crazy, they want the same things at the end. A lot of them want to lead a good life, feel good about what they're doing, have children who are successful and doing well, and to show them that actually this is the way to get there, and we see you and we honor your needs. That is someone, that's who I think Vivek is. And I'm really so proud of him for doing that over and over again.
Yeah. Thank you. So I learned something else last weekend with these guys too, that I always thought it was funny because when I talked with Vivek the first time, he shared he didn't aspire to be president. And in fact, he read a book once about, it was like a first grader, that it was about becoming president. And he told me, he's like, I just thought that was awful. Like, that would be horrible. And here he is doing it. And I also learned last weekend about when he came to tell you about writing a book. So can you tell, what is that like as a spouse when your husband comes to you with these, hey, I think I should be president, and hey, I want to write a book?
Yeah. So he's, like I said, he's always been that kind of fearless guy who will come to me and want to do something that I would never have expected. So we met when Vivek was in law school, I was in medical school. And, you know, I should have known from the beginning, and I kind of did, that he wasn't a normal kind of just law student going to be a normal lawyer. He was the entire time working as an investor in biotech companies. And he was actually one of the top investor probably in the world at the time, despite, you know, being at Yale Law School. And I kind of knew this guy was a little different. And that was even more obvious when right after he graduated, he came to me and said, Apoorva, I think I'm going to start a company. And I said, wow, you've never really mentioned that before. I thought you were going to be going back to investing. And he said, no, you know, I've been just watching for years how these pharmaceutical companies have just been ignoring these important drugs. They've been mismanaging their trials. They don't run the right trials. It's too expensive. It's not the right medications, and it's worse. And I think I can do a better job. And I said, well, do you want to try working for a company first, or, you know, see what it's about? He said, no, I think I'm going to start this company. I said, okay. So the week after we, had our wedding, we went and rang the bell on the New York Stock Exchange because of his first, public IPO. So, and that company, it's had its ups and downs, but it has gone on in record time with a CEO who was 28 years old to make 5 drugs that have been approved. And these are for drugs that otherwise would never be approved. Things like endometriosis, for women that have been suffering for years and years. Some of them end up with hysterectomies and can never have babies, even at a young age. So these are important things that these pharmaceutical companies were just not doing. Things like this particular drug for these children who otherwise had this congenital syndrome where they didn't have an immune system. And, when I was in med school, we were told these children, they will die within a year or two. That's just what happens. And because of the drug that his company developed, these children, most of them can go on to lead normal lives. And again, it's one of those things that would never have been developed because pharmaceutical industry thinks it's just not profitable. And so that's who this guy is. He's someone who will do things because it's the right thing to do. And he finds a way to make it successful. And then after that, while he was the CEO of this company, I was doing residency. I thought, okay, this is what we're gonna do. I'll be a doctor. He's gonna have this company. This is what we'll do. He came to me and said, you know what bothers me? I don't like the DEI and ESG kind of policies. And I said, what are those? And he said, oh, it's this thing where basically all these politicians are trying to tell us CEOs what to do. And this, my responsibility is to my shareholders. They have no right to be telling me what to do. And also, why should I as a CEO be telling normal people what to do? That's their decision. These are things that should be decided by democracy, not by some random CEO. And he said, you know what? I think I'm going to write a book about it. And I said, okay, but no one knows about these things. Why do you want to write a book? He said, people should know. And you know what? I think it's going to be a New York Times bestseller. And I said, well, I really doubt that. I love you so much, and I think the world of you. I just don't think that's going to happen. Well, turns out Woking was a New York Times bestseller. And he's gone on to write 2 more books about it. And so then he said, you know what? This is so important. I'm going to start a company. And I'm going to go up against BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street. These companies are controlling every single part of our economy worldwide. And these are the people who are behind all of these woke policies in these companies. And I think I can go up against them. And I said, these are literally bigger than most countries. Their GDP, how can you go up against them? And he said, I have to do it because I think people are hungry for an option. And now that company is managing more money than JP Morgan was at the same stage in those similar funds. So then almost exactly a year ago now, when he said, Apoorva, there's problems in this country that I don't think I can control just by being a good parent to our sons by running these companies. I think I have to run for president. And this time I learned my lesson. I said, tell me how I can help. Of course we were nervous because we had 2 young sons. Our youngest was just 6 months old at the time. But we realized that there's just only so much you can control as a parent. And that's really why we're in this, is because we want the best country possible for them in the future. And the only person, I think, who can do it in the best way possible is really Vivek right now. Oh, yeah.
So it's always an adventure.
Yes, definitely always an adventure.
Okay, let's jump to some of these questions. This first one is, given your experience in healthcare, what are some of your ideas to make it more affordable? And maybe also start out with what you do, because a lot of people aren't aware that she's literally a surgeon Monday through Friday and then comes here over the weekend.
Yeah, so I am a throat surgeon at Ohio State. I work at the cancer center. And what I do is I actually treat patients who've had cancer. They've been cured of cancer, and now they're dealing with the side effects, unfortunately, of a lot of our treatments. They can't eat, they can't communicate, they are a lot of times really suffering. And that's, to me, the most important. I love working with these people because they know what's important. They know that after going through the scariest thing you can imagine, feeling like having been diagnosed with cancer, the most important thing is being able to enjoy time with the people you love, being able to talk to your grandchildren, being able to sit down and enjoy your Thanksgiving or Christmas meal. And that's what I get to do. I do a lot of research and surgeries, and that's what I do, Monday through Friday. And that also has shown me a lot of what is so broken with our healthcare system. Vivek calls it a sick care system, and that's really what it is. It waits for people to get sick, and then suddenly all of these options, these pills and surgeries come out, as opposed to helping enable people to lead a healthy life with good nutrition and exercise and sleep. These things that actually are the most powerful. Exercise alone is more powerful than any drug ever in history. No pharmaceutical company has ever invented a drug more powerful than exercise. And yet, what do health insurance companies pay for? It's definitely not allowing you to exercise. And it's just so broken. I think so much of why our healthcare system is so expensive is because it's totally oriented in the wrong direction. And there's so many ways for us to fix it, but a lot of it comes from removing a lot of the incentives, the crony capitalism, where these companies, these hospitals are often owned by private equity companies. They're not owned by the people who have skin in the game. They want people to get sick. They want their hospitals to be full so that then they can get more money. This is not how we ensure people get healthy. It's how to ensure that people get rich off of sick people. And Vivek really cares about taking that away, the crony capitalism, and having be real capitalism for healthcare, because it can help so many things. Think about in how many industries where capitalism has helped. The most broken industries in our country and in our world are the ones where all of these other big companies have their say and get to have a say in how our laws are made, how our democratic process kind of happens. So that's what he's really into fight. He can't, that one aspect of him is he cannot be bought out by those special interests. And, no matter who wants to try to tell him what to do, if he doesn't think it's the right thing to do, he will never do it, no matter how much money you try to give him.
I love that. Okay, the next.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah,
to what she said?
Of course.
So in the context of exercise, totally agree with you.
Yeah.
My wife's a board-certified health coach, so this is something we live and breathe.
Yeah.
We're an agriculture state. We've got conglomerates that are controlling our food, and incidentally, the marketing message to the world. Like
Yeah.
our country doesn't have a vision for what healthy living looks like. Would you speak to that? Like if you,
Yeah.
as our next first lady,
Yeah.
like would you speak to that? Does Vivek speak directly to that? Like how would you guys set a vision for that? And how to change that from us going, oh, eat these foods that aren't good for us, sit on your butt, play video games. I mean, like it's marketing, right? It's about the leisure
true.
lifestyle, and it's not healthy. What would you say about that?
I think there's so much of it is that every aspect, so our food pyramid, it's so much of it is it's upside down, and it is, well, it's not, they have a My Plate now, it's not the pyramid anymore, but really how it's
Only slightly
made.
better.
Yeah, it's made by people who make money off of selling us food and marketing. And good, healthy, unprocessed meat, good, healthy vegetables and fruits, and these things are not what make money for those people. It's that highly processed things in boxes in the middle lanes of your grocery store. That's what makes Nabisco and Kraft and all these companies money. And so getting those people out of that process and it's pretty obvious. We all, it's not like a contested thing in medicine, like what makes people healthy. We know the basics at this point. And the fact that, people are able to say that any random cereal with like 50 different colors is part of a healthy breakfast is the problem, is that we are so subject to these companies telling us what to do. And the government at least should be outside of that. So that's kind of, yes, but I feel very strongly about it. It's definitely a passion. All right. Any other follow-up questions for that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you speak more to the, we can say that, we should exercise more, and I agree with that, but then you have, a large portion of the population that are kind of already there, you already have health problems, and I'm kind of more interested in the insurance aspect of that. You look at the current, pharmaceutical model, they have to go through the PBMs.
Yeah.
You have to balance, creating incentive for these companies while also making it affordable. And those kind of get disaligned. Just curious, from your background and your husband's background, what are some of the policies there to kind of maybe fix that so, you can, avoid a single payer health system eventually? Because it seems like that's where we're all going eventually.
Yeah. And if you think about it, so how do most of us get our health insurance? It's from our employer. And our employer gives us a couple different options for health insurance. It's not like you have the full menu. And even the people who are allowed to be in the health insurance company, that's, we pretend like this is capitalism. It's not capitalism. It's a full-on, not a monopoly, but an oligopoly. They control how many other companies can be in this industry. They have huge, huge barriers to entry. And so they can have these crazy premiums. They can have these crazy deductibles because people don't have options. So they will take whatever plan is given to them. They will work until they're 90 just so they can stay on their health insurance that will pay for the right medication that they need. And it is crazy to me that we just don't have better options. And a lot of it is because there's just so few options right now. People who are young and healthy should be able to have a different option than people who are older and have other issues. This issue is so broken. I think Vivek talks a lot about getting these companies out of, if you think about who made the Obamacare policy, a lot of the people who were in that room making the Affordable Care Act policies were these PBMs, were these pharmaceutical companies, were these health insurance companies. They need to get out of the room. Yes, they should have some say because they know something about it, but they should not be controlling how our markets are made and how they play out.
Okay, the next question was, what's something misunderstood about Vivek? Or what would be the biggest thing to you?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people get to know Vivek from his debate performances. And you get a very particular... and I love it about him too because he's so strong. I think, I think Megyn Kelly asked this question about, you say you're a uniter and yet you go and you fight against these people. And how can you say that? And I would say that Vivek is not there to unite the Republican candidates. He's there to unite America. And when you see him out on events like this, on every single hundreds of podcasts that he's done, on other interviews, that's when you see the real Vivek. The real Vivek is someone who is kind and generous and fun and engaging, and that's the person that thankfully I'm married to. He's got that ability to debate and to fight for his values and his principles and for the people he is defending. But it's so important, and that's why he's doing more events than anyone else in the race in history, is because he wants people to see that there is so much more. We need a fighter, but someone who's also a uniter. And I think that's really unique about him, and I think that's really why we're doing all these events, so people can see that side of him as well.
I think that's a really good point, and I would say the same thing from seeing Vivek out there and just knowing them so much more personally, that they really are incredible people. My background is not politics, so I would not be here if I didn't believe in them personally and think wholeheartedly that they should be our next president and first lady. And I think it's a good reminder, and that is one of the things I personally love about Vivek. Not all things should be compromised, frankly. That's what convictions are. When you have deeply held convictions, they're not always open to compromise and making everybody feel good. So I actually appreciate that about Vivek, that he doesn't do that. Compromise is good, but then we also have convictions. The next question was, what would you say to the people that are uncomfortable with his debate style and interaction between candidates? The tough truth.
Well, I think we just
kind of
addressed it. But yeah, I think one of the aspects of this whole process, everyone told us this process is ugly. This is a difficult process. What you're putting your family through is going to be very hard. And to be honest, for the most part, it's not. We love this. Part of the reason why he's able to go to hundreds and hundreds of events is because he enjoys it. We learn so much from these events, from talking to people, and it's been really wonderful. What we have learned, and what is worse than we had imagined, was how corrupt our political system is. Mm-hmm. So we had thought, and we had, you grow up thinking that these politicians are people who have principles and values, and we're going to vote for them, and they're going to fight for us. And that's just not true. And he has developed a lot of disappointment and frustration and anger with the people who are often on that stage, because they are pretty corrupt. Mm-hmm. And that has been something that, yes, he has gotten progressively angrier on the debate stage. But it's because he sees everyone out here who comes to us with these earnest needs and concerns, and he wants to be able to truly fight for them, as opposed to just pretending like the other people on the stage are people who care about Americans in the same way. We are not, we haven't, he's a politician now, but we haven't been. We have been those people who are who are out there hoping that the politicians are going to take care of us. And that has been the biggest disappointment for us, and sense of responsibility. I tell people at every event, if you ever think about it, just run for office. You are going to be better than anyone, most people. Like people like Kimberly and Jake, people who are good, kind people who care about other people. You are the people who should be getting involved and really making it a true democracy. I think it's just so important. And it's really, I was always taught, keep your head down, work hard. You can take care of yourself and your family, and let the government be, and just stay out of it. And we've realized through this process, and through just being, humans in the system, that, you think you don't care about the government, but the government cares a lot about you and what you're doing and how you live your life. And we as Americans and the little people have to stand up and take responsibility for how it's run.
That kind of lends into one of the other questions I saw on there. A lot of people have had concerns, myself included, just because you guys are such good people, like how you will survive in the political system. So who do you choose to surround? And I have experienced some of this as well by the team that you do have surrounding you. But what do you guys look for in surrounding yourselves with people, and what do you think will kind of help insulate Vivek throughout this process?
So he generally, first of all, we surround ourselves with people who will tell us the truth. Turns out that that's something we like. We want someone who, if they disagree with us, they tell us. I look at Trisha here, and Kimberly and Jake. These are people who are not afraid. If they disagree with you, they think you're doing something they do not agree with, they will tell you. And that is just so important, and been so refreshing. People you love and trust and know that they care about this. We share the same priorities, we have the same convictions, and you'll tell us if we're starting to go the wrong way. And I think that's what, how we've lived our lives and how we plan on continuing it. We haven't really changed that much from our regular day-to-day lives just because we're doing this.
Do you think that will carry over into how Vivek will choose like his cabinet and the other just people that will be in office?
Yeah, I think Vivek says this, that he will not play a game of political snakes and chutes and ladders to win. He picks people based on whether they share his values. So, even if someone tells you that, oh, this person will help you get this demographic and these people appeal to this group of people, that's not how he picks people. He won't pick someone because, oh, this will add some diversity to your team. He picks amazing women and men and people of all backgrounds because they are the best person, because they are so smart. And that is just how he's done it in every single company that he's ever built. And it turns out that we women can be very good at things, even if someone's helping us get to where we're going. And that's how he plans to continue in building his cabinet and Supreme Court and everything. He's actually already put out who he would have on his Supreme Court.
Thank you. Okay, this is kind of fun. We haven't had questions like this before. Okay, how have you and your husband been able to bring new people into the voting community? And how much progress do you think have made? And which group?
That's a great question, because that's really what it's about. Jake had mentioned that this Iowa caucus comes out to 200,000 people. It's not a lot. And if we can change what it means to caucus as a Republican, then we can turn this game around. And that's really what a lot of what we're in this for. I mean, if you think about it, the Democrats have taken the caucus out. So there's a lot of people in Iowa who are feeling homeless from the Democratic Party because they feel like the Democratic Party, aside from just taking the caucus importance away altogether, they have moved away from those Midwestern values. They used to be able to see some of the Midwestern values in the Democratic policies, and now those are gone. And that's really an opportunity for us because and Vivek talks about this, we can represent the pro-America agenda, an agenda about pride in our future and pride in where we've come from, the principles of our independence. And that's really compelling to a lot of young people who are, for better or for worse, they're on TikTok. They're the people who are on college campuses that usually traditional politicians avoid because they have basically given up on them. We are out there for every single high school senior, every single college student, every single immigrant who has come to this country because they believe in the American dream and what this country represents. We are here to bring those people into the caucus because they have been traditionally unrepresented, and that's what we're in this for. I think it'll change who people consider a first-time voter. So you look at who contributes to your campaign, and traditionally in a Republican campaign, you get about 2 to 3% of people who have never really donated to a Republican before. Most of the time, people who are donating to a Republican are people who have donated to Republicans. Well, for us, it's 40% of the people who contribute to this campaign have never contributed to a Republican campaign before.
Wow.
40%. So we really believe that this is going to turn the game around in terms of what it means to be a Republican, and having someone who can represent that for the people. I think a lot of the polls are going to be very surprised.
Mm-hmm. That leads into the next question is, how do you think Vivek can change kind of the branding and bring Republicans back together? That the Democrats they feel like they have a better sense of branding as far as who they are and having that known. But how do you think Vivek could help with that as far as that branding?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think a lot of the Republican Party is in an identity crisis in the same way the United States is. There's the old school Republican, the country club Republicans who kind of were pro free markets, pro globalism, and that was kind of the 90s Republicans and a lot of what Mitch McConnell and their priorities are. But then there's a new America First Republican. And that is a different set of priorities. It's a different set of priorities for our foreign policies, what it means to send our soldiers to a different country. Why? What are the standards we have to hold ourselves to before we sign them off to, put their lives in danger? What it means to use our tax dollars, what our priorities are, whether those tax dollars should go to deciding whether they should go to another country or helping people in the United States. Those priorities are very different for an America First conservative. And I think that those priorities are much more compelling to a lot of people in the middle of the Democratic Party or independents who would like to have a government that actually cares about them as opposed to, everyone else, and having this image of strength without actually having any strength at home. And so that's a very different set of priorities. And I think this is the one that's going to win out. The America First policies are the ones that are going to win out. But yes, we're definitely in a battle in the Republican Party and what we're going to represent.
So a big question that people ask is, what happens if Vivek doesn't win? What does that look like, or can you reference a time when maybe he didn't succeed at something? But what if?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of Vivek's early companies was called Axavant. It was a company to help people with Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's meant a lot to Vivek. It was actually, this company was the first one that he had founded, the first one that had a big drug outcome, and he cared a lot about it. His mom used to treat Alzheimer's patients back when she was younger. And when he was a kid, he used to play in the nursing homes, play piano for her patients. And the group of people were really important to him. And it was also important to him because I have a family history of Parkinson's. Basically, everyone in my mom's side, and probably me, will get it. And so the idea of doing something for this group of people and finding things that can help has been really passionate to our family. And so he found this drug that he thought that the trials that had been done for it were not well done. It was being ignored by this pharmaceutical company, I think it was Pfizer, and they hadn't done a good job of running the right trials. And he thought, maybe if we run the right trial in the right way with the right group of people, we can find the people who this drug could potentially benefit. And he, set about starting a company to help do this drug. And people were really excited about it. It had been 20 years since a drug had come out for Alzheimer's. So it was a big deal. And people made a lot of pharmaceutical companies were really hoping this kid would fail. Like, who is this 28-year-old kid saying that he can run a trial better than us, that he can go and be the first guy to develop a drug for Alzheimer's? Well, it turns out he wasn't. That drug failed. It didn't work. And that's something, you can't control whether a drug works or not. You can do the best trial, you can run the best company, and if your drug doesn't work, it doesn't work. And that's not that different from a campaign. You can have the most events, you can know that you are doing this because of your principles. You can know that you are running the best campaign possible with the best people and working the absolute hardest. And sometimes it doesn't work out because of what the American people want. And there's things you can't control, but that's never how we were taught to function. Vivek and I both, grew up with this sense that God has put you here for a purpose. And it's not up to you to question what you'll get out of it. It's for you to do the absolute best job you can do. And so that's how we're thinking about it. He is working 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. every single day to make sure people can understand who we are, what we stand for. And then it's up to the American people to decide, the people of Iowa, to decide if that's who they want representing them in the White House.
So no plan B.
No plan B.
I like that. You mentioned your faith. Can you tell us what role your faith has in your life and how that will carry forward into the presidency?
Yeah. So Vivek and I are Hindus. We were raised Hindus by our parents growing up, and God has been, our religion has been the reason for why we do basically anything. It has, growing up for me, my dad's also a doctor and a surgeon, and he would wake up every morning before he left for work, he would pray. He would pray that the day would go well, that his patients would be taken care of, that he'd be able to deal with the situations that came up. And then at the end of the day, every day, right as soon as he took off his shoes, he would come home and pray and thank God for the ability to be doing what he is doing, and that things had gone the way they had gone, and that they continue to go that way. And that was just how we grew up. That what we do, the privileges that we have, every responsibility that we have is a gift from God, and it's a responsibility. And so when we get to have, Vivek has gotten so much success from the companies he has built, it is not this thing that it's not a luxury for us to enjoy. It's a responsibility from God. It's resources that God has given us to now do more. Do more service to our country, to the people around us. And so that's our religion is why we do anything. It's our sense of purpose. Our responsibilities are to our children, to our parents, to our communities, to this country. And that is totally interrelated with our faith.
Mm-hmm. And I will say that too, just seeing them again on the campaign trail, just moments, that didn't go quite right. And so literally on the bus, just stopped Vivek before he went out to take the stage and was like, I think we should pray before you head back out. And he's like, okay, yes, thank you. And he does. And he's completely open to it. And I'm not praying any different than I did earlier. So it's genuine and it's true. And that's why I say we may have different religion, but our faith unites us. I do have one question that somebody had that was at an event last weekend that they had said they wish they would have asked, how did he get so smart? Where do you think, that it's like he just knows so much. So where do you think that came from?
I don't know about that. I think that's just, he is ravenous in terms of being curious. He is a curious person. He loves understanding where people are coming from, why they think the way they do. I'm really in some ways glad we're on this presidential campaign, because otherwise he would be wanting to debate me and talk about these issues with me. And I love this, but not as much as he loves it. So I think it's a lot of it is just passion, true love for these issues. His favorite class in law school, which I thought was really puzzling at the time, was administrative law. The cool thing, especially at Yale, because there's some famous people, is constitutional law. Everyone wants to be a constitutional lawyer. But he cared about administrative law because he thought that this is actually how the Constitution is put into motion in our country. And turns out now that is his biggest passion, is taking away that administrative state that has really been so unconstitutional. And so it's a lot of these threads, these passions that have been for him, being that contrarian, being that kid who was his dad, Vivek's dad, went to law school when Vivek was in 6th grade because he was about to be laid off by GE. So he went to law school at night, and so Vivek would tag along, and he would like to debate. He would debate his dad about different cases with Antonin Scalia and Clarence Thomas, and so he's always been this kid who's just been thinking about these things all his life. And so in a lot of ways, he seems like what he says come out as speeches, but that's because he has been thinking about these issues for literally decades. And so, I guess that would be my only explanation that I have.
Yeah. One last question. How do you balance it all? I have trouble with my own life. I cannot imagine how you juggle being a surgeon and the campaign trail.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything called balance. I don't think when you have toddlers, when they're no matter how many, what you're doing, none of us have particular balance. We just make it happen. And last night my surgeries went much longer than I was expecting, and we were supposed to leave at a certain time. And at some point you just decide, my dad always used to say, you have to keep the main thing. And when you're doing something, you have to put your best in it. And if your cases are going late, that doesn't matter. Just do what you're doing, do it well, and then go to the next thing and do that well. And so that's kind of how we do everything. I don't know how we're doing it. It's just we're doing it. It's like you don't know how you're getting up in the middle of the night to feed your kids, but if they need it, you do it. And that's just what you do. And so I don't know. It's happening, though, somehow.
Oh, well, thank you, Apoorva. Jake, are you going to close us?
I can.
Okay. Do we want to? Are there more questions out there?
Is there any
Couple
other
questions.
questions out there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Another one. So one of the biggest frustrations that I've had with the Republican Party is frankly their fumbling of the abortion issue, and it's very consistent. And depending on however you feel, it's a loser. I mean, Kansas, deep Republican, loses. I guess what's Vivek's, let's say he does make the general, how is he going to be able to maintain his convictions with this compromise that you're kind of
Yeah.
alluding to earlier, well, also making sure that we don't lose the general just because of the one issue.
And I think the Democratic Party is fighting really hard to pretend like abortion is part of this general election. It's really not. If you think about what the Supreme Court case showed, is that the federal government needs to stay out of a states' rights issue. This is up to the states. And the states, whether Republicans at the state level have been doing a good job, that's up to state. In Ohio, they've done a terrible job. We just had basically abortion allowed up until birth in our state. And it's horrific because that's not Ohio. We vote Republicans in. But just because the Republicans in our state did not do a good job of setting up an alternative. We had the policy that we had in place was from back during Roe v. Wade. And during Roe v. Wade, Republicans went a little bit extreme in terms of just because nothing they said mattered. So they would say the most extreme version of whatever they were thinking. So in Ohio, that meant the limit was at 6 weeks, no exception for rape or incest. So there was literally an 8-year-old girl who was raped and had to go to a different state in order to get an abortion. And that's, we're pro-life. We believe strongly that as soon as a baby is able to have a heartbeat and brain waves, that is a person. But we're pro-life in both directions. And for that 8-year-old girl, she should have had, the Republican Party was doing an injustice by letting this become to that for her. And for us, we think that they did a terrible job. The fact that now children can get transgender care in our state, because of this, they can get transgender care anytime they want without notifying parents. They can get an abortion without notifying parents up until birth if a doctor says that this is important, basically. And so these are just bad representatives of local policy. But that said, this is not a federal issue. I think one of those things that Vivek never compromises on is the Constitution. He believes strongly in the 10th Amendment, which says that which belongs to the states should stay at the state level. Murder is a state's issue and should be kept that way. And so Democrats will try to make this race be about abortion, and it really shouldn't be. And I think that's part of what he's in this for, is to say that this is not where we are at. Let's talk about the ways that the Democratic Party is failing us, and they're using this issue that's a non-issue at the federal level as a smokescreen to run interference for their terrible policies in every other direction.
Have you thought about bringing DNA into the discussion when a woman says "my body"?
So Vivek has talked a lot about doing DNA testing for establishing paternity, and then saying that, okay, if a woman, we have to make this not about a woman's right issue, but a human rights issue. And it is, for a woman, it is a big deal. Having done it twice, bringing a baby to birth is a big deal. And then, what's even a bigger deal is raising that child and being a good parent. And Vivek has been one of the few people who talks about bringing men in paternal responsibility in. So using DNA testing to say that if a woman has brought a child to birth, then she can give that responsibility of raising that child and giving them a good home to that father as being the sole person in charge. Because this is not about just about women's rights. This is a person, and this is a person who has to be taken care of. And it's not just women who should be bearing that responsibility alone. All right.
We can do maybe one more question.
All right. Anything else?
I'll do another one.
Hi.
So as the next First Lady, what would be something that you would focus on and try to be influential? I was sitting here racking my brain trying to see where I've seen our last two First Ladies were, by and large, not out in public, probably I would say less than inspiring. What would you be kind of in the background, or do you think you'd be more up front, and what would you do with that
Yeah.
platform?
I think that's a really good question. I was actually thinking about who someone asked me who my favorite first lady was. And it's probably Dolly Madison. I don't know if
Wow.
you are familiar with her. Because I don't know if anyone's familiar with the story, but during the War of 1812, the British were burned Washington, D.C. And she was responsible she actually led the evacuation of the Capitol and saved a lot of those important artifacts that we now look back at from the Revolution. She was responsible for saving those. And I love that story about her because she just did what was right in that moment. She wasn't, trying to be influencing policy. And in a lot of ways, my husband is the candidate. I think that, we've seen so many, at least since I was growing up with the Clintons, there's been this unelected person who has this outsized influence on what is happening in our country. And I think that, yes, of course I have an influence. I can, the role of a first lady is as a role model, but I also think of myself as having a responsibility, and that responsibility is honestly first to my children and my patients and a job that I am very passionate about. So I will always be outspoken about the fact that true healthcare starts at birth with good nutrition and exercise and sleep and good policies. But in some ways it's disappointing, and in some ways it's kind of reassuring that I will not be someone who is trying to set policy. I think that is the responsibility of someone who has been thinking about it all their lives, and Vivek has been, and there are many people who we trust who are doing those things. And I think it is the responsibility of the First Lady and the First Family to set an example of what it means to be a family and what it means to live up to the morals and the ideas of the American, message. But at least for me, I have been very blessed that God has given me a sense of purpose. I have a job that I'm very passionate about and I love, and I have 2 children who I care a lot about, and who knows, maybe more one day. But those are my priorities. And if we can set a good example in that ways, and if people find it inspiring to have a first lady who is a practicing surgeon, that's a great thing. But I've always found it kind of confusing what the role of the First Lady is. I don't know what it's supposed to be, but I think whatever it is, I think Dolly Madison did a good job at it.
Thank you, Apoorva. I do want to let you guys know too, we have, Jake mentioned the Faith and Revival Coalition. We do have that Faith and Revival Coalition, and we're on Facebook primarily. So if you go on there, we do post a lot of the videos of the messages with Vivek and Apoorva. And like I said, I do focus on more of the character, the faith and the family, to see that other side of them. Not so much the policy stuff, but more of who they are. And I'll let you know, I've come to call Apoorva the closer. For the people that have the questions about, like, is this guy real? Or they're just not quite sure. When you meet Apoorva and you hear more about their life and who they are as people, and you get to know them more like Jake and I have had the privilege of, Apoorva closes it for you.
Well, guys, I just want to thank you all again. Cynthia, Jim, thank you for opening your home here. What a great event. Hopefully you saw a little bit more into the life of Vivek and Apoorva. Guys, I want to leave you with this thought. I've done several cycles of presidential politics here in Iowa. 2012, Mitt Romney and Rick Santorum were vying for first place here in Iowa. Less than the people in this room made the difference between first and second place. 34 votes in the entire state of Iowa was the difference between first and second. So I think sometimes we find ourselves saying, how big of a deal is it if I make it out to the caucus? I'm just one vote, I'm just one person. What mattered in that race mattered in a race up in Northeast Iowa where a state representative won by 9 votes. It happens time and time again. And I would feel horrible if you walked out of this room thinking, this is a great candidate, but he's not going to win. I'm telling you, I was with Ted Cruz in 2016. I was involved in the 2012 election. I'm telling you, Vivek is on a pathway to win the Iowa caucus. Make no mistake about it. The polls, don't buy the polls. Don't buy the media. We've been out there. Well, maybe I'll just ask, by a show of hands, how many of you have been polled? 4?
5.
5 maybe in this entire room. Don't buy the polls. We're seeing it time and time again. We're drawing out new people. We're drawing in young people. You know, we're going to have a shockwave come January 15th, but it's gonna require your help. So again, there's pledge cards in the back here. Please sign up. Just give us your contact info so we can stay in contact with you. Additionally, if you're willing to speak on behalf of Vivek at one of your precincts, we need precinct captains. It's not intimidating, it's not challenging. We'll help you, we'll guide you through that. If you're willing to come in and make phone calls, we're lucky we're here near headquarters here in Des Moines. Come in and make phone calls for us. Give 30 minutes of your time. The beautiful thing about Vivek, and you know, I'm taking up too much time here, but those 56 men that mutually pledged their lives, their fortune, and their sacred honor, most of them did. And you guys are pledging your fortunes, for sure. The amount of money they're spending from their own personal wealth, they're not asking for a donation of money. They're not. It's a rare thing to have someone running for office saying, I'm not asking for your money, but I am asking for your vote. I'm asking for your time. I'm asking for you to post on social media about being here and talking to your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues about why you're supporting Vivek. That's what we're asking. 30 minutes of your time can change the course of America. God bless you all. Thank you.